Well, I'm happy Sam Raimi finally got to do his version of The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Hey movie fans, so Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is the latest outing from the Marvel Cinematic Universe coming off the back of Spider-Man No Way Home. Anticipation was really high for this movie after some really cool trailer spots and some potential amazing cameos. Fans were all at an all-time high. Throw in Sam Raimi, the guy that gave us the original Spider-Man trilogy, and I was beyond amped. Well, I'm conflicted on this one, I'll be honest, and I'll be very curious to see the general sentiment among other fans. I will say this, as a horror fan, I am quite happy. As an MCU fan, not as much. So let's dive into all this. We'll talk about some of the good, some of the bad, everything in between. And this will be, of course, a spoiler-free review as best as I can. There's a lot of stuff that the trailers aren't showing, which is probably a good thing. However, I'm not going to spoil anything here. There isn't as many spoilers as there are for like Spider-Man or Endgame. So I had heard for so long that this was going to be like, oh wow, if you thought Endgame and No Way Home had some big secrets, wait till you see what's in store for Multiverse of Madness. It is important to temper your expectations before you see this movie. I'm not going to tell you anything that happens in it spoiler-wise, but I'm just saying, temper your expectations because I know our hype is through the roof right now for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Go into it expecting a Doctor Strange movie, okay? With that in your mind, let's proceed. Benedict Cumberbatch, once again, is fantastic as Doctor Strange. And as you can tell from the trailers, he is doing a couple Doctor Stranges. I like the various versions of Doctor Strange he's bringing to the table. The basic premise of this is a new girl named America Chavez comes to him needing help with something. And that's about as far as I can go with the story that they've kind of said in the trailers, that I don't want to give too much away past that. I liked America Chavez, but she's kind of just a tool in this movie in terms of they just use her for other things in this. She's not as well fleshed out as a character as some other things, but they clearly have big plans for her down the road. I think that actress did fine in the very limited role that she was given. You also have Elizabeth Olsen returning as Wanda Maximoff in this. I don't want to get too specific into this, but she more or less is kind of the co-star of this movie. She has a quite large role in this along with Doctor Strange. There's many facets to her character this time around, and I think she does all of it incredibly well. I also think that the villain this time around is really well done. I think the villain in this is complex. I both loved and hated it at the same time of what they're going for, but I can't decide if it's I didn't like what they're going for or if it's they're doing their job so well because I hate them for that, if that makes sense. Like a heel in wrestling, do I hate you because you're good at your job or do I hate you because you're bad at your job? In this case, I think I hate you because you're doing your job well for the villain in this movie. I will say the music is outstanding. Danny Elfman once again pairs with Sam Raimi, who paired with him for the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. His score is good, but there's a couple times that I'll be like, this was an odd choice. There's electric guitar in certain parts that I didn't think electric guitar was necessarily the best fit, but it's a good score. It's a creepy score, and this movie is definitely creepy for sure. Do not bring your kids to this. If your kids have seen all the MCU movies, this might be the first one that you don't take them for, because it will get very intense. Like I said, as a horror fan, I enjoyed this. I can see the Sam Raimi, the old school Sam Raimi peeking out here. It is, when it wants to be, it is brutal and intense. However, the stakes aren't quite as high as I was expecting. It is very much a Doctor Strange story, and in that sense, it's very good. But again, it's complicated without telling too many spoilers. This was not the movie I was expecting, and I'm trying not to knock it for that. I am trying to evaluate this movie as a movie. As a movie, it is fine. I do have some grievances with some people that are not associated with the actual making of this movie, but if I ever do a spoiler discussion on this, we can go into it there. Now for some negatives. there's some story directions that in the moment are really cool, but when I think about them for a little bit longer, I don't like them as much because I don't think they're there for anything other than fan service that don't actually really help the narrative a lot. And while there's some cool weaving in and out for the story that's interesting, I could have used a little bit more to this story. This is a 2-hour movie, and it could have been longer. We're going at a breakneck pace for a good chunk of this movie when I wanted at least a little bit of time to catch my breath, reflect, spend some time with these characters, get more invested in these characters, and I don't think they did necessarily a great job of going past the surface level of, you already know these characters, you should care. Why should I care about them in their current situation? Like, there's no moments to catch our breath. Even Spider-Man No Way Home, after, spoiler alert, after May dies, we catch our breath a little bit, we grieve, we mourn before we ramp up the action by bringing back the Peters. There's no moment to catch our breath in this. Also, if you're not a horror fan, this movie's really not for you. One of my biggest negatives, which is surprising for a Marvel movie, this CGI is not particularly good. There's a couple shots early on, especially with America Chavez, that maybe they had some issues with hair on the green screen, because you could see some artifacting around their head, and I'm going, oh no, that does not look good. Which is weird that this is the one that doesn't have the great CG, because it had the most time in prep to get ready with all the delays and everything. But I will give it a pass because of the scale of the CG. There's some big things in this that obviously had to be rendered out, so I will give them a little bit of a pass. But I was more just jarred with how noticeable the CG is at times. Normally I'm not one to pick up on CG, but this didn't necessarily have some great CG. But getting back to some positives, there's a great action scene involving music. You'll know it when you see it, but they do some really clever things with magic and with music that I was like, that is thinking outside the box. We need more creative thinking like that. This is fully a Sam Raimi movie, for better or for worse. There's some camera work that's very Sam Raimi. There's some creepy stuff that's very Sam Raimi. I think my big takeaway for this movie, for better or for worse, whatever you think you know about this movie, or whatever you think you've heard or seen, try to go into this movie as clean as possible with a blank slate in terms of preconceived conception about what you're going to watch, okay? At the end of the day, I think I might have overhyped myself on this, and that's totally on me if that's the case, but I think also they might have been overselling some parts of this movie. Again, it's hard not to go into it without talking about spoilers, but just temper your expectations a little bit and try and avoid it or enjoy it as its own solo movie, its own self-contained narrative. Like, don't be thinking about it in terms of this or in terms of this. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Just watch it as a movie, and it's not bad, but it's not what I was expecting, and I'm still kind of processing my feelings about it, if that makes sense. So it's by no means the worst Marvel movie, but I definitely wouldn't put it in top tier. And it is a little bit of a step down to me after No Way Home, which is one of, if not my new favorite MCU movie. I was expecting a high bar, and I think it might have hit the bar instead of crossing over that. Well, what do you guys think? Have you seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? Do you like it? Did you not? What did you think of some of the surprises in this? Did they work for you? Did they not? Let me know in the comments below. As I like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 700 subscribers. That's our goal for the end of the year. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Uncharted Media Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.